They were casting for a Chinese war movie and they needed a Jewish businessman who speaks Hebrew. I am none of those things, but I went for it and somehow I got cast.
Shalom, Chaim, Shmitom, Naim Lechachir Otcha.
And so a little bit about the movie. So this is essentially about China's Auschwitz. So it's pretty grim stuff. There's all these Japanese war crimes that were committed against China. Yeah, sorry, that's a bit of a heavy transition. But I had a weird part to play in this, literally. I was in the movie about this, and it is the point in history perhaps which is most burned into the Chinese psyche. I saw they wanted somebody for the role, and like a jobbing actor here, I went for it. I'm into languages, and I just searched on YouTube for a few minutes how to introduce myself in Hebrew. I kind of cobbled it all together. I said, I'm not Jewish, I swear, but like, honestly, is this okay?
Shalom.
It passed. I mean, it passed the Chinese production. I've shown it to Jewish friends since who speak Hebrew, and they were like, we can understand what you're saying, heavy accent, we can understand it. I turn up on set, it's me and 3 actual Jewish people, and I just remember they said, hey, you look more Jewish than us. Look, we're not underrepresented in Hollywood, so, which was a relief to me because I was thinking, oh my god, I'm a fraud. I played a businessman who was going to buy a device made by the main person, which was purifying water. The actor, she was a huge star in China. I'll try to find some representative and throw it up. He basically has invented a water purifying device, and to prove it, he urinates in the cup and then he drinks from it. Is my startled face as I look at the main character whip out his equipment to prove his equipment. Then whenever we turn up on set and I'd somehow crammed my lines, they realize a question which had bothered me from the start, which was, wait a minute, the Jewish people are speaking Hebrew and the Chinese people are replying in Chinese. How are they going to talk? Now, I'd always have thought that's really weird. Maybe the Chinese people will have Hebrew lines and they're just showing them in Chinese, but like that doesn't make any sense. It can't be like shalom, ni hao, like how can they have a conversation? It took us arriving on set for them to realize like, oh, wait a minute. Now that is an issue that happens a lot in Chinese sets where they have this thing where like foreigners speak foreign language. China is not an immigrant country. They get confused by that. But to my relief then, all the lines got turned into Chinese. I mean, Chinese, I've been out here by that point 6 years now, 10 years, right? So that's a language I'm comfortable with, so thank God. But what it did mean is that these actors that they painstakingly found Jewish actors, a bunch of them spoke Hebrew, but they didn't speak Chinese. And particularly one guy who must have been about 90 years old, he suddenly had to do all his lines he knew in his first language in Hebrew, has to do it in Chinese. And then we ended up shooting until like after midnight, trying to get his lines right, which probably would have been me if we'd done it in Hebrew, to be honest. 4 years go past, and then I get a message. The director's wife actually messaged me, and they want me to come back and redub the scene because it was an issue of my Chinese. I said something like, 这个东西能进水, and they didn't like my intonation. I had like quite an English intonation, 进水吗? And asked me to redo it. But 4 years had gone by. I said, 这玩意儿能进水吗? And he was like, oh, that's like, you just sound like you're Chinese. Like that's too good now. Genuinely was the problem he said. So I then had to like put on a foreign accent. I did not think that would be an issue, that my Chinese had gotten too good to sound like a foreigner, unless he's being polite, but that's what the director said. I made a Chinese TikTok about it. It blew up. I kind of ended up getting picked up as a bit of a hero from Chinese people. Like I was getting all these, all these views, all these comments. But then it got weird. Honestly, I just spent there was a few weeks where I would just be like making videos about like, oh, these would be awful things that happened, and I would always avoid saying Japanese people. Some of the chickens had come home to roost. A Chinese friend of mine actually went to see it and messaged me because she recognized me in it, and this was her reaction afterwards. Which is some of the moral struggle which I face. What genuinely happened in history is really grim. Talking about it does help remember it, think of Schindler's List and and give a bit of shine a light on people who experience very, very awful things. On the other hand, is that going to make people pissed off towards Japan nowadays? Maybe. But then also, Japan, my understanding, and genuinely look, I'm very open to be swayed, always welcome different opinions, but my understanding is, if you look at Germany said like, oh my god, we messed up, that is so awful, everything we did, yada 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 yada, reparations, etc., is my understanding. But Japan has not done the equivalent thing. Maybe this movie is quite necessary to raise these kind of conversations. Also, people in the West, we don't know about this. I didn't really know about it. Even after, I hate to say, after I auditioned for it, It was actually my brother. I mentioned, oh, it's about Unit 731, and he'd Wikipedia'd it, and he was like, whoa, this is actually kind of mad. Like, this is just Wikipedia level basic information that the American government hid some of the things that happened in China, and that was part of the settlement at the Second World War. Oh man, so the craziest thing happened after the premiere. I get out, and this guy comes up to me, and he says, like, Ming Tao, he knows my name, and he says, I'm gonna take you to meet Shou Zhang. And I was like, Shou Zhang? What does that mean, Zhang? And I looked it up, and it was like general or something, and I was like, I didn't really get it, but somehow whenever I could hear what he was saying, it like in italics almost, I was like, you're gonna meet, yeah. And I didn't know who he was. I genuinely, for a moment, I was like, am I getting scammed here? He took me into a car. I was like, I went with him, and who he meant by generals, I ended up getting drunk with a bunch of 60 to 80-year-old Chinese former generals. That's completely a true story. This fucking happened. I don't know what else to say. This is just wild. One of them was a former secretary of WWII, and I have to say they were perfectly respectful. They just watched a movie on the Japanese war crimes against China, so you can imagine they were a bit fired up. They were feeling particularly patriotic, as I'm sure they generally are, and they said the kind of thing which, honestly, the average person of that generation in China would say about what happened, and reasonably so. It was pretty fucked up what happened. So yeah, and then we would just go around, and if you lived in China, you would know, you just end up, you had to go around, and they came over and like they toast you with rice wine, which is like, I don't know, 60% alcohol or more, and then you had to go around and you toast them, and then they were like, I honestly think I was probably a slightly unwelcome guest. I don't mean in a bad way, but I just mean they're probably thinking like, why is there this like random white dude here? Or maybe they didn't want to can express themselves as much as they wanted to, but they're perfectly polite and perfectly nice, and lovely food. We were in this like wild, the fanciest place I've ever eaten out in China, and it was this really surreal thing. I mean, what else can I just got drunk with some Chinese generals. I mean, that's what I do out here. Not specifically always getting drunk, but that's the kind of random stuff. So if you're interested, that shit kind of happens to me. So hang around if you're into that.